Hello, everyone. X-Wall Kill Bethelite here. And another Jehovah's Witness doctrine that they might end up having to change, just like they had to change the generation of 1914 that quote unquote wouldn't pass away. And they had to change the end of the world happening in 1975 and all these other teachings is 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5 that goes in talking about critical times hard to deal with will be here. And Jehovah's Witnesses look for something negative to happen. And then they quote that scripture and say, oh, see, the end of the world right around the corner here, just like they've been telling people since the beginning of the organization. It's been around the corner for like 100 years now. Well, the problem that Watchtower finds itself in is the longer it takes for their prediction of the end of the world to come, the more advancements we make in technology. The longer this takes, the more advancements we make in medicine. See, a long time ago, Watchtower would tell people that the end of the world was around the corner. I remember it was around the corner back when I was a kid. They've been repeating the same cycle over and over and over, and their members are constantly looking for something negative to happen to fulfill this never-ending prophecy that Watchtower talks about in regards to the end of the world being so close. And there isn't a single human or even a Jehovah's Witness alive that would debate that back when Watchtower was saying the end of the world was so close and around the corner, that it wasn't. It wasn't. For people that were being told that when they were kids and they're now in their 60s and 70s, no, it was not around the corner. But now when Watchtower uses this scripture, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, their favorite little go-to scripture because it talks about negative stuff. And they can use it as, well, hey, here's negative stuff in the Bible. If you see any little bad thing happen anywhere, you can say the end of the world must be right around the corner now. Oh, they must be right this time. Well, the problem is now we don't live in critical times, hard to deal with. As a matter of fact, now virtually any problem you can imagine is easier to deal with now, right? Easier to deal with. Not according to that scripture, harder to deal with. It's easier to deal with because of the technological advances that we currently have and are going to have. Things are only going to get better, right? As technology advances and as medical research advances, right? We just had a pandemic, for example. And a lot of us were able to work in the safety of our own homes because we have computer and computer technology. We're able to sit in our own home and work. A lot of us were. We ended up with a vaccine and seemingly record-breaking time. Like we didn't have to wait 5 years for science to come up with a vaccine. We're getting vaccinated now. Millions of people are getting vaccinated now. That's an example of a situation that would have been way worse decades ago. Something that would have been hard to deal with decades ago, but it's easier to deal with now. Think about the school shootings. Kids are probably safer now. I've seen the kids around here, they go into schools with like see-through backpacks. Schools can have metal detectors. Schools can have cameras, right? And if you're not comfortable with all this, again, with the technological advancements, your kid can stay at home and stay on top of their schoolwork. As a matter of fact, a lot of the kids that were at home during the pandemic, they didn't fall behind in their schoolwork too much. I mean, it's not like they're like now all the kids are a year behind. They all had to get held back. A lot of them were able to do their schoolwork at home on tablets and all kinds of little uh, computers and different things like that. I mean, anything that you can think of, anything you can imagine, it's not harder now, it's easier. Think about crime. Now, with the advancements that they have with regards to not just cameras, but forensics, the forensic science, where decades ago it'd been harder to catch a criminal if nobody saw anything. Now, if they so much as find a strand of hair, they know who did it. If they so much as find a cell phone pinging up against a certain tower close to the crime, they know who did it, or they can pinpoint who all was there, and they know who to investigate. Now it's easier for them to stop crime, easier than it has ever been. Right? With all the advancements, a fingerprint is all they need. They got cameras all over the place now. All they need to do is get a hold of video footage. People, it's harder to get away with things now. Cameras in stores. Police have got video on their uniforms and whatnot. It's even harder for the cops to get away with things. I remember a long time ago as a kid, I used to watch television laying on the floor, and behind the television was a big glass window. Our house had a glass window that was about as big as the entire wall. So while you're watching TV, you can't help but to see what's going on outside. There were cops that surrounded this car outside of my house. And, as a kid, I walked up to the window, and the cops had the guy in handcuffs, and he was laying forward against the police car. And I remember cops surrounding him, like they're just surrounding him everywhere. And you can see the guy with the baton or whatever they call it just beating away on the guy. Like they are just beating away because, hey, as long as nobody sees anything, they're not going to take the criminal's word for it. They beat the dickens out of the guy. And I remember then the cops started going from door to door asking, did anybody see anything? Well, now we got cameras on them, right? So it makes it better than what it was. You're able to see what was going on. The things that go on that upset so many people. We wouldn't even have been able to see it before. It's still better than it was back in the day. And they want to talk about, oh, it's so hard now, and now we things are so bad that the end of the world must be around the corner because it's so bad now. Back in the day, people came to this continent and pretty much killed off all the natives or most of the natives in a mass genocide. The Native Americans getting murdered and killed in a mass genocide and raped and everything else, and you think it's worse now? Now things are critical and hard to deal with. What about them then? Wasn't it harder for the natives of this continent or Native Americans to deal with being shot and killed and everything else? There's no way Watchtower is going to be able to continue to use this doctrine, because the longer Watchtower is around, the more advancements that we make in technology. Now, you talk about kids being disobedient to parents, like what that scripture refers to. You can have cameras in your kid's room, and you can be at work. And if you told that child to stay in their room, you can have cameras all through the house. You can be at work. And I've seen the commercial where they get their phone or this little tablet or what have you, and bam, they pull up the video. And you can have video surveillance of your house. And you know what those kids have and have not been doing. You can have those kids, you can give your kids cell phones, and you can, if you let them go somewhere, you can check on them every 30 minutes if you want to. We have more now to make it easier to deal with. Critical times, easier to deal with now than it ever has been. There was a group of people that were hacking things, and people were having problems getting fuel. Somehow they were shutting down fuel lines, and with all the hacking going on, you can just put up cybersecurity. There were people that were warning about, when you have hacking going on, typically there's somebody warning against it in advance, where if people wanted to do something about it, they could. We can't even look at everything that happens on the news as, oh my God, we're living in times now where we just can't do anything about the things that's going on, because oftentimes there were things that could have been done about said hacking situation, but that company didn't want to pay the money to do something about it. For example, when in Texas, we were without power because there was not so much, it wasn't a blizzard. We just had the basic winter weather that everybody else has. And all these power plants went out and what have you. Even then, with all of that going on, with the technology and things like that that we have, we're still able to, like, I was able to have my phone running. I could still charge my phone, and with my phone, I have access to information on where to go for gas, where to go for food, where to go for this and that, and the other. And then also, too, the whole situation didn't have to happen to begin with, right? Right? They could have winterized all these facilities if they wanted to spend the money to do so. So it's not a situation where we're living in a time where we just can't do anything about certain things that are hard to deal with. We're living at a time where right now, when things happen, most of the time something could have been done about it. And things are done about it to make it better, to correct matters, right? War. I'm sure that scripture talks about war. Right now, we could go to war with somebody, and if you didn't watch the news, you wouldn't even know you were at war. I remember we were at war with with this country and that country, we wouldn't even have known we were at war. Like, it's not like you see a bunch of soldiers coming across the border and we're all hiding inside of our basements or something. There hadn't been nobody at our borders trying to invade in my lifetime. I mean, come on now. We had wars in the past, major wars in the past, but those are over with now, and there isn't a world war right now. So Jehovah's Witnesses can't even use that as fear-mongering material. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, you should have said that critical times hard to deal with were back in World War I, right? Then that's when the end of the world should have happened, right? Things were critical and hard to deal with then. No, it didn't happen. Well, what about World War II? Things were critical and hard to deal with then. No, it didn't happen. Armageddon didn't happen. The longer they wait, they're running out of bad stuff to point to say, oh my gosh, it's so hard to deal with. We are sitting in our homes with air conditioners, refrigeration units. If you don't want to go to the store, you don't have to. There are apps where you can have people bring food to you. They call it DoorDash. Critical times hard to deal with. Child, please. You ain't even got to go to McDonald's if you don't want to. Somebody will bring your McDonald's to your door. They will bring pizza to your door, but they'll bring Chinese. They'll bring you some wings. There's companies that'll bring these giant jugs of bottled water to your house. You ain't even got to go outside no more if you don't want to. They need to stop, but they need to go ahead and start trying to figure out, just like when they falsely said that the generation of 1914 wouldn't pass away before the end of the world would come. They need to go ahead and start figuring out, what are we going to say now? Because we hadn't been in a major war. Even if we go to war, it don't affect nobody. And technology and medical advancements are making it so that things are better now than it's ever been in the past. And we're here sitting around telling everybody that it's worse now than it's ever been in the past. It's going to eventually become blatantly obvious, as if it weren't right now, that that's false. There ain't a single problem you can think of that isn't easier to deal with now than it was if the same thing happened in the past. We have more now. We have more than what we had before. So the real reason things are critical and hard to deal with for Jehovah's Witnesses is because a lot of them live in poverty because they listened to Watchtower, and Watchtower told them end of the world was right around the corner. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to get education so that you can get a job in the technical fields. You don't have to go to university so that you can learn this or that to benefit you in the future. All you have to do is pass out Watchtower and Awake magazines at people's doors and keep giving us money. And then the end of the world is going to happen and everything will just fix itself. Well, it didn't happen. So Jehovah's Witnesses, that scripture is oftentimes true for them. Things are critical and hard to deal with for them because they live in a bad neighborhood with a lot of crime, right? Instead of getting good jobs, good well-paying jobs, live in a nice gated community where you don't have that problem. Instead of having the best medical treatment. They may have a job where they can barely pay medical bills if something were to happen, right? You could have just gotten a job, good, well-paying job where you could afford a medical emergency or something happening, and you just go to the hospital where they're going to have a good hospital where they're going to have more medical technology and breakthroughs than they ever had in the past, right? It's just simple. This scripture, you can't keep using it. It's better now than it was in the past. If something happens, we all have access to that information. Let's say something does happen. I mean, if somebody so much as kidnaps a kid, your phone is going off with information. Look out for a black sedan. There's somebody there. I mean, we just have so much more now than what we ever had before. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. But when Watchtower uses that whole, oh, it's so bad now, that's why we're saying end of the world is around the corner. That's a flat out blatant false lie. I mean, I can check my banking stuff on a computer. I ain't even got to go to the bank. I mean, it's so much better now. Cars. You got cars that got cameras where you can see behind you. You ain't even got to turn around in the car no more. You got cameras that show you behind the car. You got cars that will stop you before you hit something. Are you serious? Cars are going to be able to drive themselves before long. What do you mean critical and hard to deal with? What's hard to deal with other than you're broke? And it's because you listened to that cult of Jehovah's Witnesses and didn't get a good, well-paying job and get good education and prepare for the future like you should have. You're listening to this cult, doomsday cult, constantly telling you the end of the world's coming, the end of the world's coming. You got people 80 years old still waiting for the end of the world. Can you imagine how delusional you got to be 80 years old, 70 years old, 60 years old, and they've been telling you since you were 12 the end of the world was around the corner? Comment down below. Let me know what you think. X Wall Kill Bethelite signing out.